Welcome, Japanese woodblock print collectors and enthusiasts. Today we are going to talk about one of the true giants of the ukiyoe world, the artist Utagawa Kunisada. And as usual, I'll start with some background bio information and then we'll look at selected prints from his body of work. Kunisada was born in 1786 in Honjo, near Edo. His father was a merchant and a poet and owned a ferry. The family had enough money so he could take part in the arts, and he studied painting. In the year 1800, at the age of 14, he became a student of Utagawa Toyokuni, the head of the famous Utagawa school. And later he took the artist's name Kunisada. By 1813, he was considered to be the top ukiyoe artist in Japan, even more popular than Hokusai, Hiroshige, and Kuniyoshi. One of the reasons for this popularity is that he was the most prolific print designer with over 20,000 designs in his 60-year career. That includes books, prints, and paintings. So do the quick math, and that's 350 designs a year. In fact, in 1852 alone, it was said that he produced over 700 designs. Now, obviously, one person can't do that alone, but by that time he had a big studio with a lot of assistants. There were over 50 artists that worked at his studio, many famous ones among them, including Sadahide, Kunisada II, Yoshitoyo, Sadanobu, Kunichika, Chikanobu, Kunikai, and of course, many, many others. Side note, it's not unusual for a popular artist to use assistants to co-produce artwork. This arrangement was also popular throughout Europe and America. Michelangelo, Rembrandt, Rubens, Andy Warhol, and Jeff Koons are some examples. Okay, enough background. I'm going to take you through some of Kunisada's print series, semi-chronologically, starting with his Great Performances series in 1815. And I'm starting with actors because actor prints, or yakusha-e, made up about 70% of all of his prints. In this first print, the actor is playing the role of the greengrocer's daughter, Yaoya Oshichi. And she was supposed to be a teenager and not too smart, which I think you can see comes across in this print. You can learn more about her true story and sad fate in my video on the Suzugamori execution grounds. In this next print, we see the dramatic mie pose of this actor as he transforms himself into the thunder god and flies to Kyoto to fight his enemy. Note how distinctive the characters are in these early prints. I think Kunisada was influenced at that time by Toyokuni's style. And here's an example of an actor print by Toyokuni, so you can see what I mean. But as we go through this video, you'll also see that Kunisada's style changes quite a lot as time goes on. Let's jump a few years to 1818 and look at his early bijin-ga series. Bijin-ga means beautiful women pictures, and Kunisada was famous for his bijin-ga, and they made up about 20% of his body of work. The Pride of Edo is a beautiful set of 10 prints comparing the famous places of Edo to the women of the area. Many of these prints show the stylistic influence of Utamaro. What is interesting here is that these women are not all fancy, dolled-up geishas, but working women going about their daily activities. Now let's skip to 1832. Kunisada did several series of actors' portraits reflected in mirrors. See how he uses the ornate black frame of the mirror as the frame of the picture. There is a colorful cloth wrapped around the edges as a decorative element, and the kanji or text description is outside the frame on the paper. This is a clever concept, but he wasn't the first artist to do faces reflected in mirrors. Here's one designed by Shuncho about 40 to 50 years earlier, and a similar beautiful print by Utamaro. But see how Kunisada's version is much more stylized? The actor is not literally peering into the mirror. The mirror is a device to frame or reflect the portrait of the actor. Kunisada designed very few landscape prints, but in the late 1830s he published a 53 Stations of the Tokaido series. This series had a beautiful woman in the foreground with a stylized cloud element separating them from the landscapes in the background. Take a look at the background here in this print of Mishima, a village with travelers on a misty evening. Now look at this print by Hiroshige of Mishima. Notice the similarities. Here, I'll fade back and forth. Kunisada borrowed and adapted most of the landscape backgrounds from Hiroshige's popular Tokaido series. Here's another example. In the foreground, a beauty travels on an ox. In the background, a snowy scene. And here we can see Hiroshige's print of night snow at Kambara. The general thought here is that Kunisada and/or the publisher did this in order to help promote Hiroshige's Tokaido series. At this time, Hiroshige was an up-and-coming artist, so it was a win-win. Kunisada got his amazing Tokaido backgrounds, and Hiroshige got the prestige of being associated with the top artist of the time. Hiroshige's Tokaido series went on to be extremely popular and jumpstart his artistic career. It reminds me of many of today's musical artists that get parts of their tracks sampled by more famous musical artists, and that association helps boost their career. When I get to the 1840s, I start to go crazy because there are so many series I like, but I'll start with a series I didn't even know existed before doing the research for this video. Shadow Pictures of an Auspicious Age, a half-length bijin series designed in 1844. This is a beauty reading by lantern light. I love the hard edges of the light and the dramatic shading. And this print of a woman peeping through the screens at something interesting happening on the other side. Now we get to one of my favorite series, the 53 Parallels for the Tokaido Road, a collaborative Tokaido series by Kunisada, Hiroshige, and Kuniyoshi, published around 1845. These prints are by Kunisada. And I love this scene of the woman fishing. Look at the details on her kimono and her focus on the wriggling crawfish. Then there's this one of a woman making shibori cloth, which is a dyeing process where the cloth is wrapped around pebbles and it creates circular patterns. You'll see this patterned cloth on many kimonos in ukiyoe prints. By 1852, when Kunisada was 67 years old, his studio was producing the most work ever, and he produced his most famous Tokaido and Actor series of 139 prints called 53 Stations Along the Tokaido with Parodies of Actors. In this series, we see the kabuki actor in the foreground, and then there's a cloud-like element that separates the actor from the background. And then in the background, we see scenes from the Tokaido stations. Kunisada was the first artist to use the Tokaido theme as a backdrop for his actor portraits. And if you notice, the cartouche in the upper right also has objects that relate to that play or location. One interesting aspect of this series is that although the prints can quite easily stand by themselves, many of them can also be combined into diptychs or triptychs because the backgrounds match and the actors have some relationship to each other. One source I read said that some of the prints in this series were so popular, 7,000 copies were made. So let's go down the rabbit hole for a second, and let's say that 7,000 first edition copies were made of a print back in 1852. And let's estimate that 50% of those prints were lost or destroyed in the past 170 years. I don't think that's unreasonable. Then let's guess 25% of the remaining ones are in very poor condition. So that leaves us with 2,635 decent prints. Let's assume 1,000 of those are in museum, college, or gallery collections. So that leaves us with about 1,635 decent prints floating around the world for collectors like us to potentially purchase. And the cost for one of these prints in very good condition is often less than $500. And that's amazing to me. This esoteric woodblock medium that requires such artistry in the design, carving, and printing. Plus, here we have the most popular artist and his most popular series in very finite numbers for what I believe is a relatively low cost. So all those assumptions I just made underscores one of the issues in woodblock print collecting. We don't really know how many prints were printed in the 1800s. I'm sure at the time the publishers kept meticulous records, but I've never seen any, and I don't know if any survived. If you have some insights, please send me a note. Okay, back to Kunisada with a series dear to my heart, Famous Restaurants of the Eastern Capital. I love restaurant-themed prints because they pair famous actors with popular restaurants of the day. In this case, the bold actor portraits in the foreground were done by Kunisada, and the restaurant scenes in the background were done by Hiroshige. And I guess that once you have a winning formula, you might as well go on repeating it. In 1854, Kunisada teamed up with Hiroshige again to publish the 53 Stations by two brushes. Two brushes meaning Kunisada and Hiroshige. And by now you know who did what. In this print we see a blind masseur giving a massage to a traveler. And in this interesting print we see an androgynous looking youth being inspected by an old woman to make sure he wasn't a she. This is because they had strict rules about ladies of the court traveling out of the city. From 1860 to 1865, Kunisada was in his 70s, but still managed to produce over 160 different series of prints. I'm going to quickly run through a handful of those so you can see the variety and artistry in them. In 1863, we have the series A Modern Comparison of 36 Flowers. I love the cartouche on this series with the big fat juicy kanji. This series is notable because it included a portrait of Kunisada done by Kunichika. In the year 1864, one of his last great series, the 47 Ronin, Stories of the Faithful Samurai. And this is a fun series called Contest of Magic Scenes, where actors were shown in various mystical scenes, many from kabuki plays. Here's one of the 36 prints from that series, and then this is the title page. Then we have the Flowers of Edo, a collection of famous places. This is a collaborative series with 21 artists participating, including Kyosai, Hiroshige II, Yoshitoshi, Sadahide, Yoshitora, and others. Each of the panels were done by a different artist. One of the top panels displays a title section, which has the name and troop number of the local fire department in it. Then there are panels with scenes from the district, along with, of course, a kabuki actor. I thought this next one was a nice actor series, a collection of popular birds in accordance with your wishes, from 1860. And I'll wrap up with a present-day suikoden, showcasing well-known actors portraying dangerous outlaws and bandits. Kunisada continuously developed and adapted his style to match the demands, tastes, and trends of his time. He died at age 79 in 1865, in the same neighborhood in which he had been born. He was buried in Komyoji Temple, but surprisingly I found very little information about this online. For those of you wanting to learn more about Kunisada, I really recommend this book by Andreas Marx on Kunisada's Tokaido. I'll leave you with a well-known anecdote that relates that the young Kuniyoshi was having trouble making a living as an artist, and he was thinking about giving up. Then he saw Kunisada, enormously popular, dressed in rich clothes and enjoying himself with beautiful geisha in Edo. This motivated Kuniyoshi, and he vowed to renew his devotion to his art, and later he became an extremely successful artist in his own right. I will produce a video on him sometime soon. I hope you've enjoyed this quick overview of Kunisada's work. Please like and subscribe, and happy collecting.